Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. At least I see 2 ladies, not bad for meetup, I must admit. 3, I cannot count, that's on me. And I will talk today about some stuff, SSH. Everybody knows SSH, I'm pretty sure here in the room. Everybody uses it. Yes. Everybody has a config file. A lot less people, okay. And have you ever tried to work with tunnels? Cool. And have you ever tried to proxy over SSH? Okay. So you said to all questions, yes, can go. But nevertheless, you can also attempt and have a talk about it. My name is Lars Erler. I'm head of IT at Check24, the big comparison portal in Germany with the annoying advertisements. You may know. Most people say, yeah, they have a lot of hobbies. I always say I have 3 kids. I have enough hobbies, so enough to do. I'm very passionate about automation, team building, delivering good software, and yeah, fixing problems at root cause. So fixing problems the real way, not patching things and patching things and patching things and patching things, but fix it the real way. Even if it's more work, but it will help you in the end. And most people say, here, now contact me via Twitter. I say, drop me an email. I have no time for Twitter. So SSH, you said all know it. It's pretty old. It was developed in 1995 by a Finnish guy from university. They had some security problems. They used Telnet and Gopher and stuff like that, everything clear text. And they had some really big incidents. And then he first developed the first version of the secure shell SSH, everything encrypted. There are 2 major versions. There was SSH1, that was the original version, and then SSH2. This guy later formed a company. I'm not sure what the name of the company was, but nevertheless, OpenSSH, also OpenBSD, took the original code, the last version, which was on BSD license, and made OpenSSH out of it. This is long time ago. I think it was in 1999. And SSH is used primarily in Unix-based systems or Linux-based systems to access shell accounts, to have a confidential and integer data and secure channel to do a lot of nice things in the end. So there's also a second part, as most people know, SCP, secure copy. It's one of the things you can use to transfer files. It's pretty similar to FTP in the end. You can just transfer some files between 2 hosts. It is also on the SSH protocol sitting, so it's also secure. You can make sure that no one is seeing your data, basically. The rest, which we can just ignore for now. As I said, OpenSSH is built by the OpenBSD Foundation, or community, I would say. There's a lot of tools like SSH, SCP, SFTP, which is both do the same thing. There's some key management stuff like SSH add, SSH keygen, key sign, and keygen and key add and stuff like that. And there's the server side. You have the client side and the server side. The server side is the daemon and the SFTP server, the SSH agent. So it's a big, pretty tool chain. The most interesting part is most of it was developed by one guy from Germany, as far as I know. So there are at least 10 people were contributing to the whole system, but most of the stuff was done by one German. And I just copied these lines from the OpenSSH history page. It's incorporated in many commercial products, but very few of those companies assist OpenSSH with funding. So if you think it's a nice tool, give them some funding, they will like it, okay? They will need it. So now we come to the config file. I hope most people of you have a config file. If not, you should start from now on with that. If it helps to make your life much easier. the default location is in your home directory .sh/config. There are some strict permissions. You have to have read-write for the user and not accessible by the others. So there's a lot of information inside, and it defines how you will connect to servers. And the cool thing is it will be used by, at least on my Mac and on Linux and Windows. I don't know. I'm not sure how it works in Windows. It will nearly used by all programs you can imagine. They are reading these config files, or the SSH application itself, the SCP, SQL-ACE or SQL-Pro, for example. You just pin to the name of the config file, PHP storm, everything works with the config file. It makes life much, much, much easier. So how does a config file look like in the simplest case? I try to prepare something, okay?
Can you zoom in?
Yes, sure. And presentation mode. Nice. Oh.
Yes, thanks.
Cool. You can do some default configurations like what you see here in the beginning. For every host, you can say use the keychain, add to agent, forward the agent, connections, retries, which identity file you should use. I hope everybody uses identity files, not password and key. If you do that, stop it. You can also disallow it on the server side, so you just force the people to use keys. But I think that's out of, well, that's too basic to talk about now, how to create a key file. But nevertheless, you should have one. And then you can have a configuration for each host you want to connect to. Yeah? In my case, for example, if I have a host meetup non-interactive, it gives it some host name. That's an internal domain for my employer. That's not important here. I can give it a username, which I want to use. I'll give a port and some other options. And you can have, as you may see, this long file. This is my configuration from work, but nevertheless, this is now for today, okay? So basically for each server you want to connect, you should have at least one configuration. You can also have multiple configurations, like imagine something like that. You want to say, I want to connect as root. Oh, fuck. And you have a different configuration, although you're using the same server, okay?
How do you use that configuration?
What?
How do you use that now? You have to say host name.
Give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. Here you see the host name, yeah? So let's go to, I prepared it to make it bigger, even bigger. So I can now connect with that name. So it doesn't need to write, I don't need to write something like SSH minus P, where's minus? No. It's gone. Something like that. Or, but that's annoying. You have to remember all the time. You should have a short name. This one is long. I have shorter names for real life, but it's just to show you that. And as you said, we have a new one with root. And guess what? I'm root. And I'm using the same server. So you can do a lot of customization here. We'll come to it later when we talk about tunnels and proxies and stuff like that. You can have for one server, I don't know, a lot of configurations depending what you want to do with it, you know? So let's go back to my slides. Yeah, SSH remote calls. You can do, or you can use SSH interactive and non-interactively. What does it mean in the end? Yeah. So the normal way, what we did is like we want to connect something, and I said, okay, show me what is in the temp folder. Yeah, you just connect to it. So interactive, or you can do it non-interactive. So to just pass the command behind your SSH call and does basically the same. Okay, less coloring. This is not configured here, but in the end, it does the same. You can do remote calls, interactive and non-interactive. You can just use that type of style with the last one. You can use the last type of style, for example, in shell scripts. Can connect to your server, do something, check the return code, and do the next thing on something else, so some other call. Okay, that's the simplest use case. Okay. Yeah, auto completion. I forgot that. So I say, okay, I prepared something for Meetup, and when I do tab completion, I get the auto completion configured. You see, local forward, non-interactive root, remote forward, non-interactive proxy. So it makes auto completion. For the bash, you have to install in a Mac the brew bash. What was the name? Bash completion, and then it works. You have to add something to your bash RC, and then it works. I think for SSH, it should work out of the box. I'm not sure. If not, just Google for it, because it helps you a lot. When you have a long list in a config file, you don't remember the words. You just tap, gone, done. Linux users are happy out of the box. It just works. And every distribution I tested it. And it even works with SCP, as I said, yeah. Something like SCP, what I have in temp, something nice. I don't know, nothing. Okay, we just make it another way. Back the Meetup. Touch. We create a file called 1, okay, and then we just say non-interactive /. Copy my 1 file, and it goes there, and that's it. And I can use the name as I set up in my config file. So the same works for CQAs and mostly all modern programs, which in the end passes the config file. Yeah, it's a simple format, it's easy to pass, so it works a lot of places. So as I said in the beginning, use a config file. Okay, makes your life much easier, more productive. You don't have to remember. If you have auto completion, that's good. Okay. So yeah, now we come to the first tunnel stuff. Most people have the following use case. There's some database on some production system or on some staging system. They don't have the database on their machine, which is a small, nice Mac, but it doesn't fit the database on the machine. But somehow you want to connect to that database. And you want to make it easy. So I stole this picture from the internet. I just Googled it. It's not my picture, so I'm not good at slides at all. They see it's just text. But basically, how does a local forward works? The SSH client connects to your remote server and forwards your port. Hard to see it. Forwards a port, in this case 3306, the traditional MySQL port, to your local machine on localhost on 3306 or whatever port you may define. Okay, and then basically when you connect with your local client to that port on your local host, it basically sends back the data to the server and back to your client. It's nice tunnel. It's totally easy. Okay, as I said, you can just forward the port from SSH machine to your local box. And most of the time it's used to get access to protected services. You should be careful what you do when you do the production database and say drop database. When you have the permission, it's gone, but should be aware, okay, what you do. So let's see what I have prepared now. Local forward, what does it mean? I connect to some server with my user, with my port, and the most magic line is local forward. Then I say, basically, we read from right to left, basically. Forward me from 127.0.0.1, seen from the client who is connected to our server, the port 3306, to my local machine 3307. Do you understand what I mean? Cool. Let's do it. Okay. I prepared something. Hopefully it works. Meetup. SSH tunnel is 3307. You see that? Connected. Now I'm connected to the MySQL server on that machine. For example, here is my data. Okay. So I close now the tunnel and log out. Try to reload. Oh, connection lost. Unfair. Okay, let's do it again. Reconnect. Oh, we are back in business. So basically, we have now access to the database server on this machine, although this machine is not running on an outside port. It's running on an inside port. All we need is access to the SSH server. Yeah, and the SSH server needs to allow that. You can disable that on the server for maximum security, but nevertheless, it works. Can do that for everything you could imagine. The coolest thing is you can even forward any domain you can imagine here. It does not have to be on the server where you are. It just needs access. Imagine you are jumping on the SSH server, and just on the next server is the database server, which you can't access by SSH, but you can access it from the network, from the host, from the SSH host. Then you can say, okay, this is my 10 point, something point, something point, something, and then you forward that. You can even forward something from the internet, whatever you like, facebook.com, Twitter, whatever you want. But it's just use your imagination what you can do. As I said, be careful, don't drop the wrong database or Elasticsearch instance or whatever. Yeah. So when you want to do it without config file, I told you, please use a config file, but if you want to do it without, it's basically equivalent of that here. Wait. Now we see also from the left, just connect there. And I can still use my database access. So what we see is basically SSH port, user, host, -L for local forward, and then the syntax you see here basically, but split it with double columns. That's the same. Now we come to something really interesting, and you should always think about it, what you want to do with it. Remote forward turns it basically around what we saw on this image. You can put any port from your local machine to the SSH server. By German law, when you work in a company, you should not do that. You may get fired when you put internal systems to some outside server, especially if they are not really well protected or Windows machines or something like that. It's maybe not the best idea, but you can do that. Yeah? That's the cool thing. I prepared something also. We have a Jenkins machine running, yeah? And I may decide that I don't like my company anymore and just want to put my Jenkins out to the internet. So basically same hostname, user, port, that's easy. Then we come to remote forward. That means put Jenkins on my domain, which is 443 SSL, to port 10,000 on the target SSH server. Basically sends this to the machine. So remote forward. What does it mean? Basically, when I connect now, I get some stuff which I should. This is the and I just curl against this local 10,000 on the SSH server. I have now connected to the server, to the Jenkins I forwarded. It's basically the header from the Jenkins. It says authentication required. So basic wait. You see the same. So it's exactly the same. Imagine you have now your machine inside your network, and you can just forward anything from the inside network outside. Boom. Your admin don't want to like you, your GDPR compliant people don't like you, and you can do a lot of stupid stuff with it. So think about it's possible, but I've not found hardly found a use case which is good, let me say. But it's
university to bypass the firewall, like you're not writing essays.
Yeah, I can tell you an anecdote about that. Basically, when you say university, I just the first time I really used SSH except on my Linux box was when I was in university, and I was basically responsible for a Windows 2000 cluster. I didn't like it, but I had to do it. And one of the routine tasks was to add users, And I had a SSH tunnel to this Windows server and just did everything with the RDP, and everything was fine. And one evening, I made a mistake to answer to my professor really fast, like. Done in 5 minutes. He said, how you did it? I said, don't ask. Are you still in the university? I want to talk to you. I said, no. And I explained him what I did. And he said, okay, let's make a talk about SSH. That was, I think, 20 years ago. Yeah. And I made this talk about SSH. Oh, this tunnel's possibility. And guess what? 2 weeks later, I couldn't do SSH anymore over the server. I said, why? Yeah, it turned out that students who lived in the dorm had a limit on the internet line. So like you have LTE nowadays, and use the tunnels to go to the university network to download everything. So I had to travel with the train again to the university to add users. Not fun. Not fun. So if you do anything here, don't say my name. Yeah? Okay. So the last thing I will try to show you is the SOX proxy. The first time I used it was a few years ago when I was in Turkey, and guess what? I wanted to use Twitter. And when you're in Turkey, it's censored, no Twitter. I said, fuck. What do I do? Basically, no one needs Twitter, but I wanted to do that. I had some spare time. So, okay, how do you do it? You can just connect my SSH as a SOX 5 proxy. I always call it the VPN for really, really poor guys. But you can most of the time use some servers provided by your employer, and then it's really nice to do that. Yeah. So basically, that's the same what you do with the local and remote forward. It's a tunnel. The SSH server acts as the outreaching point to get the data from the internet and sends it back to your machine, encrypted, and all the network they will see is just SSH traffic. Okay. Let's go back to the config. That's funny because it's called not local forward, not remote forward, but dynamic forward. Yeah, the last one. It basically says make an SOX 5 proxy on your local machine. Easy. Okay. Fuck. This one. No. Yeah. So this is the IP address we have now, yeah, in this office. Something with 166 in the end, yeah. And you so when you go to your connection settings in your Firefox, I think Chrome removed the SOX 5 proxy functionality, by the way. And you say, okay, my manual proxy configuration is now SOX 5 host is on 127.0.0.1 and port 8080. So we will connect to that now. You just reload your, and it's the 120 in the end. So you're using the IP address of your SSH server. Think about your in a country where stuff is censored, or you're in a company network, your stuff is censored. Imagine what you want. You can just use that connection and get access to the internet. I sometimes use it to understand if our website is running outside of our network. Sometimes you have the problem that you whitelisted your own network, but the customer can't access. So you need to check on some host outside of your servers and your office network. So we just connect to some external SSH server and see if it's still running. That can be used. Attention, it leaks domain DNS requests by default. In Firefox, you can change a config called network proxy socks remote DNS to true, and then it even tunnels the DNS request. Because I tried it first in Turkey, I set up the proxy, I said, okay, reload, nothing. I said, fuck, what's happening? Now I found out that the DNS was still going to the official Turkey DNS servers, and they just reply with unknown. That's how they, even Germany, block websites. They just tell you unknown. Okay, so think about it. Don't forget this. Yeah, if you want to do more than VPN for really poor guys, you have VPN for poor guys. It's called SSH Shuttle. You have to start a server. It's very similar config. You should read the GitHub page, the documentation. It basically wraps the SOCKS 5 proxy to the system, and you can use it with all your programs. I don't know, Slack and any network client you can imagine who may know it, need it. And you can even build a real VPN with a tuned-up device over SSH. It should be not very performant, but it works. Better than nothing, At least you need access to some SSH server. And yeah, I now come to the end. Before I do some advertisements, any questions?